And once more, dear friends, we are going into the breach. Oh, you're Catholic? Hello again, everyone, and welcome to the Frontline with Joe and Joe. You acted like an American, okay? Now, there's a number of different things that have to be done in this country to change the culture, which will in turn change the politics.
And the culture's a swamp. Because that is not a Catholic teaching.
Right.
And the cafeteria is closed, my friend.
Yeah. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Resinello. And once more, dear friends, we are going into the breach. He tells the truth, just like we do at the Frontline with Joe and Joe on Sunday nights, 8 o'clock, Facebook Live. We got a great show for you tonight because, as we always say, the left is teeing it up for us, and we're Barry Bonds standing at home plate, ready to knock their lies right into San Francisco Bay. Joe Pasillo, joined as always by Joe Resinello. Once more, dear friends, we are going into the breach. Sunday night, we're a little bit late tonight, and we apologize for that, but we got a lot of things to talk about, particularly when it comes to the Democrats, because they're just always feeding us. Look, I love the fact that growing up, my mother fed me like the animal that I was, okay? If she made 2 pounds of pasta for everybody, it was because I got a pound, okay? My wife has to watch me a little bit, but my wife feeds me, okay? The Democrats, they just feed us here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Big bowls of rigatoni with gravy. That's right, it's Jersey, it's gravy. And all the trimmings and everything. And we're going to get into it all here at the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Please like our page, share it with your friends, share our videos with your friends. Please like us, subscribe to HolyFaith Media over on YouTube. Our producer, Jonathan Ross, up in Canada, produces all our content, puts it on HolyFaith Media, and a lot of other great content. So hit the subscribe button and also hit the little bell so you get a notification. And we want to thank also Mike Church down at the Crusade channel in Louisiana, because we're on there on Monday nights from 6 o'clock Eastern to 9 o'clock. So we have a 3-hour show on the Crusade channel, always on air and always online at crusadechannel.com. And it is a subscriber-based channel, but it's worth every penny, and it is not expensive at all. I think it comes out to like 40 cents or 50 cents a day, something, but a lot of great content on the Crusade channel. There's the Frontline with Joe and Joe. Of course, there's the Mike Church show. He is the king dude. There's Rick Barrett, who was gracious in the beginning to let us sit in for him on his show. You got Tim Gordon and his brother Dave lighting it up in the culture war with rules for retrogrades. A lot of great content. A lot of great content. And people that are out there fighting this culture war and raising the consciousness of the American people to fight against all the nonsense, particularly all the nonsense that's coming out of the Democratic Party as manifested by who else but, can we call him a socialist?
No, he's a communist.
He's a communist. He's a communist, and I don't really see the difference. Bernie Sanders. And so the burn is being felt out there, and just want to give a quick shout out. Dan's chiming in. Dan, good evening, gentlemen. Best wishes. Thank you very much, Dan, and thank you always for joining us. My baby's out there, and we expect a lot more going to be joining us over in the next hour or so. So having said all that, Joe, where are we headed?
Well, we're going to start, as Joe said, with Comrade Sanders. So feel the burn, people. So get ready. The socialist senator sat down for a 60-minute interview with Anderson Cooper and praised Fidel Castro. He praised his communist regime, suggesting that the Cuban people did not revolt against the authoritarian because he educated their kids, gave them health care, and totally transformed the society.
Yeah.
I'll give you the exact quote. This is what he said. "We're very opposed to the authoritarian nature of Cuba, but it's unfair to simply say everything is bad, When Fidel Castro came into office, you know what he did? He had a massive literacy program. Is that a bad thing, even though Fidel Castro did it? What do you think, guys? All you Cubans out there. I also know there's a lot of Cubans who watch our show because I went to high school with a lot of Cubans. A lot of them are my friend. Do you think, are you cool with Bernie patting the Fidel Castro on the back?
Let me give you a better one. From a political point of view, are you cool, all you Cubans down there in Florida, whose great-grandfathers were shot and whose grandfathers fled the country and whose fathers fled the country to come to America to escape? Not a regime that was authoritarian in nature. A leftist thug dictatorship with Castro at its head and Dr. Ernesto Guevara, okay, that Hollywood makes loving movies about, murderous leftist thug that he was. Democrats are shaking in their boots. If anything, they want to take Bernie Sanders and they want to grab him and say, look, we know you're probably going to get the nomination, you old jerk. That's what Tom Perez wants to tell him. All right, but don't praise Castro, because that's a sure way of losing Florida for the election, and we need Florida if a socialist, crusty old socialist like you is going to get into office. From a political point of view, Bernie Sanders just showed he's dumb. He's not only misguided in his communism, he's also just dumb.
Well,
Why would you do that?
He's a true believer. Bernie Sanders.
But he's got to be a politician, Joe. If you want to be president of the United States, you do have to be somewhat political, have some political savvy. Donald Trump did. He wasn't a politician. Bernie Sanders has been in government for decades. Okay, he's not aware enough to know. Let me not say anything that's going to jeopardize Florida. Go ahead. I hope he praises Castro all the time.
Let me throw you some factoids. Prior to Castro, I didn't know this actually, Cuba was Latin America's wealthiest nation, significantly wealthier than some U.S. states. It already boosted high literacy rates under Batista. Batista's Cuba spent more money on education than any Western European nation and the United States at the time. Sanders praises the Cuban education system under Castro, but ignores the dire state of that education system today. Deteriorated schools, a complete lack of parental choice, and harsh punishments for dissidents. This is what a Spanish newspaper out of Spain had to say. It's called Diary of Cuba. I'm translating it into English. This is what they said. Schools in Cuba lack electric lights and many other things, said an official from an eastern Cuban district, who, by the way, asked for anonymity in the interview. It's an undeniable fact. School furniture is also very deteriorated in most classrooms, especially in elementary schools. Parents help repair them, but there are no longer any fix, and they break again soon. There are no resources. So that's the wonderful education system that this man praises.
But here's the thing, too. Why isn't it that Anderson Cooper doesn't turn around to Bernie Sanders, which Anderson Cooper is not going to do? But anybody who has even this much of a clue about the history of the 20th century, why didn't somebody around? As soon as he said, well, "Is this a bad thing?" They had this literacy program. Okay, but the Nazis built the Autobahn. A lot of people consider that a tremendous feat of engineering. Okay, is that a bad thing, Senator Sanders? Mussolini and the fascists, they got the trains to run on time. Is that a bad thing, Senator Sanders? You see, we don't support Nazis because they were able to build a highway. And we don't support fascists in Italy because they were able to make the trains run on time. And we also don't support a communist thug dictatorship in Cuba that you say is so wonderful because they had this great literacy program. And here's another question Anderson Cooper should have asked you. What good is being able to read when the only thing the regime allows you to read is Karl Marx?
And a friend of mine that I work with went on a cruise last year, and he stayed a night in Cuba. He said it is in absolute and utter disarray. This is a last year guy I work with from Staten Island, New Jersey. He said the poverty, it's unbelievable. It's unbelievable.
And the Catholic Church is not faring very well in Cuba at all.
Well, they could care less about that. Sadly, our own American Catholics don't stand up enough for the Catholic Church.
Okay,
never mind the politicians, sadly.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I'm just talking about the state of Cuba. This was once a wealthy nation.
Right, and you just read the statue of Batista. Growing up, that's all I ever heard was Batista was a bad guy. Batista was a bad guy. Batista was a bad guy. You know, the communists, they were right in overthrowing Batista. Really? Well, they spent more money. Batista spent more money, according to what Joe just said. Batista spent more money on education than Europe and America at the time. So what are you talking about? He wasn't interested in educating the Cuban people? No? See, but this is Bernie Sanders, though. This is Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is a communist. He's going to try to find anything good that a communist... Hey, look, Stalin built dams. Well, who cares? I don't care if he built dams.
With slave
labor. And those who didn't go along with... how many people died building those dams? Again, these regimes can do some good things, okay? But the regimes themselves are inherently evil. You don't need the regime to do the good thing. You could have had real reform in Cuba that would have allowed for the, let's say, this wonderful literacy program, massive literacy program. You could have had that without having the communist revolution. But there was a communist revolution, Comrade Sanders. And guess what? As Joe just said, it's been a very, very objectively, a very, very bad thing. As Eddie's joining us, Eddie's down in Florida, Sue's down in Florida. Okay, they can tell you they know a lot of, obviously know a lot of Cubans down there. Okay, Florida is going to be in jeopardy now, and you know what? I love it. I love that Bernie Sanders was too stupid to realize that this was something he should not have done. Maureen's joining us too. Dan says Cubans live in fear of their gangster leadership, starting with Castro and Che. Castro's, he said. Yeah, because Raul's still there. My father was wrong about one thing. My father was usually right about these things. My father said that when Fidel died, that they would get rid of Raul and there might be some reforms. Obviously, he was wrong about that.
I actually predicted that was going to be the first event of the turn of the century.
That Raul was...
No, that Cuba would turn.
Well, they had...
And it hasn't.
It hasn't.
I mean, we're 20 years in. It still hasn't.
They're clinging, the communists down there are clinging to power. Kevin's joining us. Scott's joining us. Thanks for joining us, Scott. Yeah, Kevin, we're trying to do good work. The Chinese, the Cubans, and Venezuelans rewrite the actual history after they slaughter and subdue people. Exactly, Dan. And you know who allows them to rewrite the history? American educational institutions. And that's the truth. You don't learn about, let's say, real stats, let's say, on Batista or the nature of Cuban politics at the time. That's all you ever hear from Hollywood is Cuba was run by a bunch of gangsters, that people were oppressed, and real freedom fighters like Che and Fidel fought, and they gained freedom for the Cuban people. The place is a mess. It's a disaster.
Please. What I want to see is, will the Cuban intellectuals in America, if Sanders gets the nomination, this is my question, will you turn your back on what he said and vote for him anyway?
Of course they will.
There's the question.
Of course they will. Because he's all in favor of abortion.
Is your hate of Donald Trump, that basically, is it twisting your mind so much that you will still vote for a man who praises the very country that threw your family out and gave you 3 days in one suitcase to get out, or they would have shot you on the sidewalk?
Right. This is the enlightened revolution. That's really what it comes down to. I never understood, anytime I ever talked to people who were self-identified communists, by the way, I never understood why we allow this to happen. If I saw a self-identified Nazi, I'm walking away. Well, where are you going? I'm not talking to you. You're a Nazi. But somebody could self-identify as a communist, and we allow them to keep talking. She'll walk away from them, too, say, look, I don't support murderous thugs. You do, evidently. If you're a communist, you do. All right? But any communist I ever got into a conversation with, like when you work in New York City, especially in the hospitality industry, it's not like working in a bank. You don't get too many communists. But amongst actors and dancers and singers and comedians, you know what you get? You get a lot of self-identified communists. I say all the time, never got a straight answer. I said, if communism is so great, why do they have to build walls to keep people in? Why can't they just let people out? Why didn't Stalin and the Eastern Bloc, why didn't you, if they loved communism so much, and they were so convinced that people were just going to love it, why didn't you just open up everything at one point and say, if you want to leave, you could leave. You want to stay, you could stay, and we're going to build a communist nation here. Why did you never do? Why did they have to force people to stay? The Chinese, the Soviet Union, the Eastern Bloc, Cuba. Why is it that people had to die? Comrade Sanders, why did mothers risk their lives with their children to go 40 miles to Miami, 90 miles or whatever it is to Miami, in shark-infested waters, if Cuba was such a great place? He would probably say those people were stupid. That's what he would probably say. Well, they didn't know what they were leaving. They were ignorant people. Why would you? No, they knew exactly what they were fleeing. And they were fleeing exactly the thing that you, Comrade Sanders, want to impose on us here in America. And we're having none of it. Well, we're having none of it.
Let's listen to what Chris Matthews had to say. Obviously, Matthews works at MSNBC, which clearly leans to the left. I don't think anyone would argue with that. And Chris Matthews, this is out of his own mouth, basically, he said he's a self-proclaimed man of the left. That is what he said about himself. This is what he had to say about this statement. I remember the Cold War, Matthews said. I have an attitude towards Castro. I believe if Castro and the Reds had won the Cold War, they would have been executions in Central Park. And I might have been one of the ones executed. And certain other people would be there cheering, okay? So I have a problem with people who took the other side. I don't know who Bernie Sanders supports over these years, he added. I don't know what he means by socialism. He goes on. These issues, the issue of that campaign, it is a word, socialism. Some people like it. Younger people like it. Those of us like me who grew up in the Cold War and saw aspects of it after visiting places like Vietnam, like I have seen, and countries like Cuba, being there, I've seen what socialism is like. I don't like it, okay? It's not only not free, it doesn't freaking work.
Right.
That's his words.
Why is it that we never listen to the people that actually came here from these places?
And he's a self-proclaimed man of the left, out of his own words, and he works at MSNBC.
Right.
I mean, I'll be truthful with you. There is socialism is here because there are people, true believers. This guy has a following,
right.
Unlike all the rest of the Democrats. It's embarrassing.
Right.
This is a guy that works for a self-proclaimed media outlet that is clearly left-leaning. That's being kind. I would actually say it's a propaganda machine for the Democratic Party.
Sure is.
And here's a man saying this. I can't even believe he said that. I can't even believe he kept his job, actually. But putting that aside, there are people that actually buy into this nonsense.
Right.
I can't believe it. This is how twisted our culture has become. People say we're crazy because of what we say and do. Really? We're crazy? I'm just saying the truth.
Here's a guy couldn't even tell Anderson Cooper about the numbers, about his math. Anderson Cooper asked him about doing the math. Well, can you give us the math? Well, we'll get to that. Well, no, we want to actually know now. You're running for president now, Senator Sanders. We want to know how much it's going to cost now, not afterwards. And this is not Nancy Pelosi with Obamacare. Yeah, you got to pass the bill to see what's in it. No, we want your plan now. I want to know how much you're going to tax me up the ass if you get elected. I want to know now. So I can try to rally people to vote against you now, which I'm going to do anyway. But this is what we have to deal with. And remember something. This is the scary part, okay? The Nazis were able to take power with 7 people. Hitler used to brag about it. Sieben! He used to give a speech. Sieben! All right? He took over a nation with 7 people. The communists, the original Bolsheviks, was about...
That was fantastic.
Well, that's what they did. There was a guy, the communists, the Bolsheviks in Russia. There was like a couple dozen people. Okay, they took over a whole nation. They overthrew a powerful monarch. They overthrew the Tsar. Okay, don't ever think because. But that's if you see one of the
that's
all.
That is awesome.
All those things are all over YouTube. Like so you can see like you can see speeches from Churchill, from Hitler. But yeah, these people might be a minority in this country, but let me tell you something. When you look at the fact that 7 Nazis can take over a sophisticated culture, a sophisticated German nation, okay, and that a couple dozen Bolsheviks can overthrow a czar, don't ever discount the fact that there's about 35% of the people in this country or 30% of the people in this country who are dyed-in-the-wool Bernie supporters, which means they're communists, okay? And all the lukewarm and Democrats that because Bernie's right on the social issues like abortion and everything else are going to fall in line and vote for him anyway. Okay? This dude is scary. They call Donald Trump scary. There is nothing Donald Trump has done in his administration that is even remotely scary to even a middle-of-the-road person. Anybody looking at the Trump administration and his policies sees it as being just kind of, these are things that I actually agree with. Okay? They would say these are things that I actually agree with. Like, let's say the border. Most people agree that we should have a secure border. There's a lot of things that Trump has done. Nothing scary about him. There's everything scary about Bernie Sanders. This dude's a nutbag. And I'll tell you another thing. I said a while ago that Joe Biden was going to be allowed to become the nominee because what the Democrats really want is they want the first gay president. Now you'd say, well, what do you mean? Joe Biden with Buttigieg on the ticket. Joe Biden kicks the bucket. Or Tom Perez goes and makes a couple of phone calls, and all of a sudden Joe Biden disappears, okay? Or he chokes on a chicken sandwich while he's in the White House, and we get our first gay president. Now I'm firmly convinced they realize it's going to be Bernie. They also realize Bernie is old. He's going to be 79 if he got inaugurated. He'll be 79 on the day of inauguration. He's not going to last that long. He's already had a heart attack. So what are they going to do? You watch. Pete Buttigieg is going to be on the ticket with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders is going to kick the bucket, and we are then going to get what the Democrats and the left want to give us, which is the first gay president. Now, again,
he's the white Barack Obama, dude.
Who's that?
Buttigieg.
Of course.
He's trying to be Barack Obama.
Right. But you know what? I will say this about Barack Obama, and I would tell Buttigieg right out, you're no Barack Obama. And I only mean that in terms of speech giving. Because Barack Obama could give a good speech.
Oh, he could, absolutely.
He actually could give a good speech. He's full of crap, but he gives a good speech. But yeah, that's going to be the strategy. Let Bernie win and make sure he puts Buttigieg on the ticket, and they're going to bank on Bernie croaking in his first term.
In all honesty, and this is something that I read in the Federalist this week, if I was a Democrat, I mean, I will never be a Democrat, particularly on their position on infanticide, which they voted on this week. And anybody who votes for the Democrats, you're supporting baby killing. Disgusting. Disgusting.
Right.
But that's a story for another day. If I was a Democrat and I was a centralist, which there are, if you want to call their party central, particularly when they embrace baby killing, which is disgusting, I would want Sanders to get the nominee because I do think he will get his clock cleaned by Trump, and then maybe the Democratic Party will readjust itself to some type of electable position.
Well, let's get into that at the front line with Joe and Joe Pasillo and Joe Resinello. We're way into the breach. We're talking about Comrade Sanders. Let's give a couple. Let's recognize a couple people. Edward's joining us. Hey, Edward, good to see you. He says first time we've gotten to see y'all live, and always look forward to your videos. Thank you, Edward. Please share our page with your friends, and we got all our videos up there. Please share them, and we really, really appreciate it. Nick's joining us up, Nick. He says, what's up, Joe and Joe? Nick's down in Florida. I bet you Nick knows a lot of Cubans. They're not going to vote for Bernie Sanders. Eddie's saying, Eddie made a good point. Love to see the reception Bernie would get speaking to Cuban Americans. Eddie, he ain't going to give a speech to Cuban Americans. He'll come to New Jersey, maybe, and give a speech to a bunch of Cuban Americans in Hudson County, because they all vote Democrat like Menendez. Not all, but they support people like Menendez.
I believe he's Cuban.
He is Cuban. That's what I'm saying. But Florida, when Bernie goes there and starts praising Fidel down in Florida, and those people are a few feet away, where their mothers and fathers came across 90 miles of shark-infested waters to get here, fleeing the Castro regime, don't think that's going to go over too well for Senator Sanders. And yeah, so we want to thank you all for joining us. Eddie, by the way, for anybody who's in the comm box, Eddie is running for Congress in Florida. And Eddie posted a commercial that he did, and he announced he's running as a member of the Republican Party in his district in Florida. We wish Eddie all the best, and we're going to throw him any support that we could give him. So let's talk about this, this article that came out. Is that where you wanted to go?
Basically, it came out in the Federalist, and basically what it would say, I thought it was interesting. It was basically saying, if you are a Democrat, frankly, I think it's, because I don't think you're going to win, in fairness. I really don't think anyone on that stage could beat the Donald right now. And frankly, I do think Sanders' platform is dangerous. I do. Mm-hmm. I'm sorry, I do. So if I was a Democrat, I would want Sanders, because you're going to probably lose anyway. Let him get out, get the nomination, let him get crushed. And then maybe your party will come to its senses a little bit.
Can I say one thing to you?
Sure.
Because you always allude to it. But here's the key to that, and I think you'll agree. Tom Perez has to go.
Oh, that's a given.
If Bernie Sanders runs, now remember something. He might be talking about trillions of dollars for universal health care or trillions of dollars for this, that Green New Deal, okay, where a lot of, let's say, liberal left Democrats might not be in favor of it. But as far as all the socialists are concerned, they're all in bed with him. They're all on board with everything Sanders infanticide. They're all for the lavender agenda, the LGBTQRSTV agenda, the gender ideology. They're all in favor of that. that entire leadership, especially if they want those 21 million pro-life Democrats, the Democrats for Life, to start voting for them again, the entire leadership of the Democratic Party has to go, starting with Tom Perez.
Oh, please. He's clueless.
The guy's clueless. If this now look, let's break it down a little bit. They're going now again. This will never make Joe or I vote for them. But we're trying to speak politically as far as if we were Democrats and we wanted to actually gain power, they have to moderate on abortion.
Oh, 87% of America is against third trimester abortion.
Right. Now, we're abolitionists.
I'm just saying from a political
point of view,
it's a loser. And what just took place in the Senate this week, basically, there was a bill that basically prohibited abortion after 5 months because science proves that a child feels pain. That was voted down.
Well, it would be clear. It was the Republican majority and a couple of Democrats voted for it, knowing it was going to be a useless and harmless vote because of the filibuster.
Okay, fair enough.
They couldn't get the 60 votes needed to go to a vote to end the filibuster so that they could have a simple majority vote. So, in fairness, but go ahead.
Second vote, if a child survives an abortion, the child can be killed.
Right.
I'm not making this up. This was voted upon, and it lost.
41 Democrats voted against that legislation.
Actually, on that, yes, correct.
41.
The other one, I think 46.
46.
Okay. How could one person, this just shows you how insane our country has become. Mm-hmm. Here's another thing. If you believe this, a child, my wife is just about 6 months pregnant. I could feel the child kicking in her womb. A child at 5 months pregnant, if a child in the womb for 5 months, that actually is viable in some cases. That child could be taken out in an emergency situation and live. The child can feel pain. This is science. This isn't my Catholic faith talking. This isn't dogma. You're going to tell me you're for that? What's wrong with you?
They just did.
And you vote for it. You see, I've said this time and time and time again. You are disqualified as a politician, whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. You're disqualified, just as if someone came to me and said, I'm for slavery. You're disqualified. I'm not voting for you. You're for that. You're disqualified. And we have to start taking it to them, calling it out. You're a Nazi. You're for that? That's what Nazis did. They killed people. A child that survives an abortion, which means it has a wound, it's out of the woman alive. It's alive and it's wounded. You're going to let that child die?
Right.
What's wrong with you?
Well, that's what they're saying. Let's get quick. We want to recognize Barbara's joining us. Hi, Barbara. How you doing from Wisconsin? Barbara's a big supporter. Love you. But here's the thing. Dan says, you guys keep saying Democratic Party may come to the senses. Do you really think they can moderate and support rational pro-family agenda? If they moderated their positions, a pro-family agenda, I think, is out of their reach. That's why we are not going to vote for them, Dan. Never. But we're talking about just from a purely political point of view, to win the middle. Okay? Now, again, we're not for it, but we're just talking about from a political point of view. If the Democratic Party threw out the socialism and got back to a party, let's say, of JFK Democrats, again, I'm not putting JFK up on a pedestal, but pro-America, okay, where a lot of Democrats, former or old school Democrats, were America firsters, like John F. Kennedy. If abortion was ended in this country, if they got rid of the socialists and they talked about embracing or trying to foster a real productive relationship between business and labor, so labor doesn't constantly get screwed, but you also respect the rights of business owners to make money. There's a lot of things to talk about there. We can't vote for these Democrats. We didn't want to give you the wrong impression, Dan. But we're talking about if they actually want any kind of power in this country, they'd have to moderate somewhat.
Third trimester abortion is a loser. Meghan McCain on The View said that, and she's spot on. And show makes me want to retch. It's a loser. When Donald Trump debates anyone who gets that nomination, and abortion will come up, and he brings up those two bills, that person is going to look like a savage.
Yeah.
He is going to savage them.
Good.
And I love it. Because he should. He should. And you know something? We should be ashamed that our country stands for that. Do you know that we're one of 7 countries on this globe that legalize third trimester abortions? 7 countries. We call ourselves a Christian nation.
Yeah, we ain't Christian.
Disgusting.
Right.
Disgusting.
Because when we would all stand up and we would do something about it. I want to address Dan again because it's important. You know something, Dan? You know who I think, again, I might not be spot on with this. Donald Trump, given his current policies, okay, would, I think, be at home in the Democrat Party prior to the embracing of the sexual revolution in the 1960s. Prior to the Democratic Party going completely to the left and embracing abortion and all of it, the sexual revolution, Donald Trump's been taking care of workers, trying to be a bit more protectionist, tariffs, okay? He's always talking about workers' rights, respect for life, okay? Appealing to blue-collar, the people in the Midwest, their blue-collar sensibilities, particularly on religion, okay, and religious freedom and respect for life. You know, Donald Trump is not a lockstep conservative Republican. In fact, he's pissed off a lot of Republicans.
Actually, this week I saw him with a flag, an LGBTQ flag.
Yeah.
He's not an ideologue.
So he's not perfect as far as I'm concerned. And that, honestly, that makes me not want to vote for him when I see that. I want to say, hey, hold it, Donald. Okay, we don't need that nonsense. But anyway, my point is that the answer to your question is no. This current Democratic Party is not going to moderate enough for us. But if they want any kind of political power, they're going to have to moderate. I think that was our larger point, Dan.
Well, that's enough, I think, on Comrade Sanders.
Comrade Sanders.
He gives me agita.
Well, you know, that's what he's good at. If Democratic Party cannot become pro-family, then they will never align with American families. Their base is all identity politics. Yep, and they're stuck with that, Dan. They need to make a radical break. They radically shifted to the left. Now they have to radically shift back the other way. Again, if they want power.
Let's go to Mikey B from NYC. I'm talking about Mr. Bloomberg.
Did you see Trump? Did you see Trump a few days ago? Did you see the video of him? You know how like he calls people like Crazy Bernie or Crazy Joe and Pocahontas? Did you see him bow down at the CPAC? And he bowed down, and he goes like, and he's like, the mic's up here. Then he said, and the place went ballistic. I just watched a clip of that. Place went nuts.
Please, I would love to see actually the two of them, 2 New York businessmen going at it. It would actually be humorous.
And Trump towers over him, so you know that Trump now hates short people. So you know that was he hates gay people. No, he embraced the flag, so he doesn't hate gay people anymore. But he hates black people, he hates Mexicans, and now of course he hates short people. But go ahead.
Well, there it is. Bloomberg was determined not to call Xi Jinping a dictator. He's the president of China. He's not alone. The Houston Rockets had issue with calling out China. But Bloomberg clearly had a little problem on CNN. I'll break it down for you. In a CNN town hall on Wednesday, Bloomberg declined to call the Chinese president Xi Jinping a dictator, saying it's a question of what a dictator is, and that while China is not a democracy, leaders are still chosen by a small group of people and are replaced periodically. So this was exact quote. So just to be fair to Mikey B, I think the question is, if your definition is a democracy where people vote and pick their leaders, that is not what China is about. They like their system, and I think they're wrong. I think they'd be better off opening things up. But he still wouldn't use the word dictator. Clearly, this man is a dictator. And, you know, it reminded me of Obama because he wouldn't use the term radical Islamic terrorism.
Mm-hmm.
It's the same thing. It's political ease. Clearly, there are issues in China. And let me throw some facts at you. And I am sure Mike Bloomberg knows about this, but in case you don't, this is what's going on in China. Bloomberg chooses to ignore how much Xi has consolidated power over the last 7 years. Under Xi, they have removed term limits, so he will probably be able to remain in his position for the rest of his life.
A regular Julius Caesar.
Xi has cultivated a cult of personality around himself more than any previous leader since Mao. She's image dominates the front pages of state newspapers, hours of state television broadcasts, magazine covers, posters sold at the market, billboards around parks, and signs posted around sidewalks.
Do you know who wanted to do that, by the way? Hillary Clinton. Hillary Clinton thought it would be a good idea to have a constant loop on in all federal buildings like post offices and places like that, constantly spouting the Democratic Party line, particularly when it comes to abortion and reproductive rights. When you say that these people are not communists, but they act the same way. Hillary Clinton wanted to do that. She wanted to be like Xi Jinping, like her face all over the place.
Well,
can you imagine waking up every day?
Egomaniacs.
Well, right, but can you imagine waking up every day and seeing posters of Hillary all over the place? Heaven forbid. Can you imagine waking up every day and seeing posters of Bernie Sanders all over the place?
But clearly why Mike Bloomberg chooses to ignore these facts, and they are facts, is Mike Bloomberg has an international business. And like the Houston Rockets, and like the NBA, for that matter, it wasn't necessarily the Houston Rockets, it was more the NBA who were trying to promote basketball in China. They have a business interest, so they're not going to bite the hand that feeds them. Mike Bloomberg probably does billions and billions of dollars. It not does, or if he does. So, and then people have issue with Trump. Is he going to use his wealth, his this, his that, to his interests? This man clearly has a conflict of interest with a national power. Is that a problem, CNN? Is that a problem?
No.
No.
No, not at all.
Not at all.
Right.
Not at all. It's the same nonsense, to be truthful with you. Typical politician.
Right. And these people, we need to start shaming these people when they do this. When the thing happened with the Rockets and the GM of the Rockets came out and said, I stand, he tweeted, I stand with Hong Kong. All right. And everybody in the NBA who's making millions of dollars off of China, they all came out and they were all in an uproar, like Joe said, because it's all about money. So LeBron James gets up there and says, well, you know, I know we have a right to free speech, but see, that's where I say stop. Right, I have the right to free speech, LeBron. I don't care if it costs you millions of dollars. You think I open my mouth or shut my mouth based on how much money it's going to cost you or put in your pocket? Those people are being slaughtered over there. Xi Jinping said, we will ground them into dust. He's a communist thug dictator. But he's good for you because you make tons of money off his regime. You make tons of money in that market. American businessmen should be ashamed of themselves. Mike Bloomberg should be ashamed of himself. Because they won't condemn communism the same way Ronald Reagan did. And call it the focus of evil in the modern world because that's what it is. China is the focus of evil in the modern world. China is an evil empire. China forces women to have one child. And then only one. And then we'll rip a baby out of the womb. We'll drag the mother out of her home and drag her to the hospital to rip that baby out of her womb. No political rights, no right to free speech. And then you American businessmen want to preach to us, what, we're supposed to love China? F China. That's what I say. F China. I'm with Donald Trump. They've been screwing us because of people like you, Mayor Bloomberg, and LeBron James, and all you businessmen making money in China. They've been screwing us beyond belief. And the only guy to come along to take our back and to tell China, hold it, you're not robbing us anymore, was Donald Trump. Donald Trump. That's why he's going to eat your lunch, Mini Mike. If the Democratic Party screws Bernie Sanders and rigs that convention and you get the nomination, you're not going to be president of the United States because you're a wacko too. You're an out-and-out wacko.
No big gulps for you.
No big gulps for you, and you can't use a big straw.
Damn right.
Plastic straw. Barbara said, how come the church allows Catholic Democrats, their platform is rooted in abortion? Because many prelates in the Catholic Church, Barbara, are liberals. And because they agree with their old school on the Democratic Party economic policy, because they want to see that, they'll justify it in their mind by saying, well, they care about the poor or they care about workers. I will say this, though, Barbara, if the Republican Party, as Joe and I have said on the show ad nauseum a million times, if the Republican Party would shed their country club image and start becoming a friend of the working man and fostering a mutually beneficial relationship between business and labor, the Republicans can reign in this country for decades. For decades. The Democratic Party would be forced to have to do something because the Republicans will say, no, we love business and we want people to make money. We value free enterprise, okay? But we also respect workers' rights. and we're also going to protect workers. We're going to have job security and good wages and everything else, and promote policies that protect workers, like a closed border. In other words, with legal immigration, so that wages don't get driven down, like promoting family life and getting women who don't want to be in the workforce out of the workforce, raising their families. That will also drive up wages because businesses will have to compete. The Republicans need to do this, and we will not have to hear from Democrats for a very, very long time. If the Republicans don't do that, if they don't shed their country club image, because they're right on life, they are right on life, they're right on the social issues, but if they don't get the economics straight, you know what? People are going to still run to the Democrats. And then we have to listen to people like Mini Mike and Bernie Sanders. That's why. And the Catholic Church, a lot of the prelates are old school Democrats, and they just can't shake that. They
well,
just
not
really
only
can't.
that, the Catholic Church, 40% of the Catholic Church's budget comes from
That's, yeah.
and it's allotted towards what's called resettlement centers. You see, the Catholic Church should have, that was their mistake. They should never have taken that money, because basically they're almost owned in a sense. And that's why you see some prelates, when it comes to certain issues, kind of do the sidestep, if you ask me.
Mm-hmm.
You don't trust in God. He'll provide your money. I don't want your money, the federal government's money, for even if it's something good, because then it's like everything else. There's strings attached.
Yeah.
Just like anything. People don't give you money for nothing. Your mother and father do that.
And those
outside of that, no one else does. And that's why any person who thinks that things are free, even Chris Matthews said it about Bernie Sanders.
And nobody's more liberal than him.
Nothing's free. He's a super liberal, works for a crazy liberal station. Wake up, people, for crying out loud. It's actually nauseating. It's nauseating. I can't even believe it.
Right. I mean,
I can't even believe it.
I don't expect the USCCB, let's say, to start endorsing the Republican candidates. Okay, but they should have, at the very least, recognized as a group, in one voice, there is one party that has in its platform a pro-life plank, and there is another party that has in its platform a plank that says that babies can be killed up to the moment of birth. That should be a no-brainer for the USCCB. Anyway, Dan, thanks for the compliment. He says, great point on Republican Party embracing workers and business. There is a complementarity, Dan, and Joe and I have said it on the show before. If people want to read Rerum Novarum, that was Pope Leo XIII's encyclical in 1891. 40 years later, Pope Pius XI in 1931 wrote Quadragesimo Anno on the 40th anniversary, and Pope John Paul II in 1991, after the fall of the Berlin Wall, I believe it was 91, wrote Centesimus Annus, all of which condemn socialism and communism, but all of which also warn against the danger of the excesses of the capitalist system and consumerism, and are calling for a cooperation of labor and business. There's a mutual need there, no matter how much our current business owners want to deny that. You need workers. If you have a business and you can't afford to pay workers, you don't have a business. That's the bottom line. So get it straight. If we would have that type of relationship, people listen to the Catholic Church on this, Dan. You want to know something? We might be able to move forward economically in this country. We might be able to do away with predatory capitalism. Okay, vulture capitalism. We're not leftists. I know the lefts like to use that, but Mitt Romney's a vulture capitalist. He's a predator. Paul Singer's a predator. Private equity firms are predators. We don't need predators. We don't need people who are going to destroy. We need people who are going to build up businesses and the workers that work for those businesses. So thanks for the compliment, Dan. Appreciate it. You're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, we're way into the breach. John's joining us. Hey, John, what's happening? PM is joining us down there. Nick is joining us. So where are we headed next, Joe?
We're going to the Supreme Court. The U.S. Supreme Court will decide. They took a case out of Philadelphia. They're going to decide whether faith-based adoption and foster agencies can be forced to place children with same-sex couples.
It's going to be a big case.
As I said, this is a case that they took in. It's the case is Fulton versus Philadelphia. And here's some facts around it. In March of 2018, and this is just days after putting out a call for more than 300 foster families. So basically, Philadelphia was in need of 300 foster families. The city of Philadelphia stopped allowing foster children to be placed with families who work at Catholic social services. Philadelphia argued that the Catholic agency had to either endorse and certify same-sex relationships or close down. The city did this despite the fact that for over 100 years, Catholic social services has served the city, and guess what? Not a single same-sex couple has sought to foster a certification from that organization, not even applied, for 100 years.
They just go somewhere else.
So here's the thing that I find interesting. You need foster families, right? You just put out, we need 300 foster families. And here is Catholic Social Services, who are doing it well and doing it for 100 years. And you want to shut them down.
Of course they do.
So that to me sounds like you're cutting off your nose to spite your face. That to me sounds like ideology trumps the good of the children.
Does that shock you?
It doesn't, but it's just the same nonsense we see with the public education system, with charter schools, the same nonsense what we see with vouchers for Catholic schools that do it better than public schools in inner cities. We could point to Newark, St. Benedict's Prep, which graduates 100% of their kids, and they pool from the same swamp that the public school pulls from, and they graduate 30. Seems to me that ideology trumps the good of the children. Once again, seems to me that you stink.
Right.
Sorry.
And they're happy to do this. City of Philadelphia is happy to do this. They want the Catholic Church out of this. They know the church is not going to change its teaching. This is a huge case, by the way, because then it says you cannot discriminate against an institution based on religious beliefs. See, they're always talking about discrimination. You're just discriminating against it. You're such a hater. Well, you hate the Catholic Church. You hate us. We're going to protect our rights. We have the right. We're going to protect our rights. We want to be treated fairly in this. We're not buying your agenda. And we don't care for it.
It's your ideology. It's your deranged ideology.
And it is deranged.
And frankly, it just, again, you can't see past your ideology for the good of the kid. You see, it's the same thing with the public schools. You don't care about the kid. You care about your ideology. Why can't you just carve it out? Why can't you just carve it out?
Because that's them with less power. They say, Joe, when you're dealing, let's explain this. When you're dealing with leftists, okay, you're dealing with people who want unfettered, unchecked power. If you carve out exceptions, that means, in this case, we're using the Catholic Church as an example, that means that they would, by using logic, not have power over the church. And they want power over the church. They want power over all society. The church is the main institution they would love to have power over. They will not, look, Obama proved that. He wouldn't carve out an exception for the Little Sisters of the Poor. He had every reason to do so, except his ideology, which is, I'm going to get those nuns to do what I want them to do. Because I'm Barack Obama. And I want to have power. And I'm going to tell them what to do. Because they can't stand when there's a check on their power. That's why they're so dangerous. Donald Trump doesn't want the power that they want, the way they try to suggest that he's some sort of a fascist. He's consolidated. Donald Trump's trying to embrace federalism. Give rights back to the states that the federal government has usurped through the deep state, the Supreme Court, and everything else. The Supreme Court, this is a Supreme Court now, with two justices that are Trump nominees, Trump judges. They better rule the right way in this case. They better rule the right way in this case.
While Trump nominated them, they're constitutionalists, and that's frankly all I'm interested in. I don't even think that's a Democratic or Republican issue. I want someone who is going to defend the Constitution. I believe in it because I'm an American. It's one of the greatest documents ever crafted, and I'm not the only person that have said that. I want judges that are just going to uphold the Constitution. I'm not interested in activists. I'm not. And that's why I'm voting for Donald Trump. That's why I voted for him. And that's why I'm voting for him again, for judges.
Well, we better hope that these judges vote the right way.
Well, let me give you some stats on this issue. I think it'll open some eyes. Faith-based agencies, i.e., agencies that will only foster children to both a man and a woman, okay? It's not just Catholic. The Catholic Church. So let's make it, let's
crystal
be
clear.
Faith-based agencies place over 57,000 children into loving homes nationwide each year. Across the country, 5 major cities and 1 state has already shut down faith-based agencies out of the foster system. Meanwhile, some are saying the U.S. is in the midst of a foster care crisis. There is a shortage of families and a surplus of at-risk children due to the part of the opioid epidemic. Religious agencies like Catholic Social Services are particularly successful at placing high-risk children, i.e., those with disabilities, large sibling groups, and older children into loving families. What's the problem? You're disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
You're just disgusting. I can't even believe people support these people. Disgusting.
Well, there's an anti-Catholic strain in this country. There always has been. You know what's appropriate? It's appropriate that this is happening in Philadelphia. E. Michael Jones points out all the time, one of the things that scared the hell out of the elites, Philadelphia had the image of Philadelphia at the time, because Michael Jones grew up in Philadelphia. He says there was President Kennedy went there at one point. And he said on the stage in Philadelphia was basically the worst nightmare of elitist WASPs and Jews, which was a Catholic president, a Catholic governor, and a Catholic mayor, all on the same stage in Pennsylvania. Okay, and this anti-Catholicism, okay, that's run rampant. It's really a bad strain in this country. Going back to the beginning, this is just the current manifestation. Philadelphia and Pennsylvania, Philadelphia in particular, was a solidly Catholic city. Okay, and here they are. They're going to be the city in this particular Supreme Court case that's going to say whether or not the Catholic Church could actually stay in the business of fostering children or providing foster services. I say this as someone, I've said this before on the show, because my life's an open book. My wife, we're in the process of fostering and adopting children. Okay? And the thing is, why is it, I feel like we're at a moment in history. I should have been able, when we embarked on our journey, my wife and I should have been able to pick up the phone, call the Catholic Church and said, we need kids. And he should have said, come on down, here's the address. You go down to the diocese, they give you all the information, and you go and you start fostering kids, and probably be able to adopt straight out of the Catholic Church. The left, and Barbara mentioned earlier about the church itself, they've allowed this. The bishops have allowed this.
Well, the people,
because they haven't fought, and yes, you're right. I know what you're going to say.
And the Catholic people have voted for this, and it's not just WASPs like Protestants vote for it. Cultural Jews vote for it because Orthodox Jews are not for this. Traditional Protestants are not for this. You're cutting off your nose to spite your face. If an organization does right by you, what is the problem? You see, your ideology once again blinds you. It blinds you, and it hurts the country. It hurts the country. But you don't care.
Right.
You don't care. And you'll continue to vote for them. It's sad, actually. It's sad.
Well, that's the state that we're in. And by the way, I know what you mean about, don't get me wrong, I know what you mean about, let's say, conservative Protestants and Orthodox Jews. I get it. They're mostly on our side when it comes to these
they
things.
definitely
But I'm
are.
talking about a fear. At the time, it was a fear in this country that Catholics had too much power. It's historical. So, anybody out there who's going to start hand-wringing about it, in other words, there is a hatred among certain groups in this country. There is a hatred of the Catholic Church. Now, leaving all that aside, getting back to Barbara's earlier point, okay, is that the bishops, at the very least, should be on the side of fighting against this and being in the business. What is the church, outside of the means of salvation, okay, and the sacraments? It does function in many ways as a social institution. What better way to benefit society than to help parents, all right, married couples who want children, to getting children into their homes, into their loving homes? What better thing could you be for? And yet this has to go to the Supreme. Why do I have to rely on government, USCCB? You should be speaking with one voice very loudly on all the television stations. All right, you should be out there. This should not be a topic for the front line with Joe and Joe. This should be something people have already heard about all over the culture because you're opening your mouth. But you don't. And then we have to fight. And my wife and I have to go to, as Catholic people, we have to go through the state. And I have to deal with those godless people trying to ram the LGBT agenda down our throats, telling us we can't really be good foster parents if we have these antiquated notions of sexuality.
And where are our rights, our religious rights? Aren't I and many others who believe in the same thing entitled to believe what we believe? Clearly we don't. Clearly we don't. Mainstream media doesn't put this out there. Never. Ever.
That's where we're at. Anyway, you're at the front line with Joe and Joe. Joe Pasillo, Joe Resinello, and we're finally, what are we, at the end of the breach?
Yeah, we got one more. It'll be pretty quick. We're going to the tolerant people once again. Shocking. They're so tolerant. California is the Trump administration from forcing churches to fund abortions. How nice. How nice. Mm-hmm. California officials will not heed the Trump administration warning that the state is in defiance of federal religious liberty protections, announcing that they intend to continue a policy of forcing private employers to subsidize abortions, even churches. So they're basically going to shove it down the throats of the Catholic Church and the Orthodox Jews and the conservative Protestants in California, saying that your insurance plans have to pay for abortion. They're going to defy the Trump administration. They're going to once again say your religious liberties mean nothing. I'll be honest with you. I don't think they should build the wall around Mexico. I think they should build it around California.
Right around. No, they should extend it.
Those people are out of their mind.
They should extend it all the way up from the border of Mexico, all the way up, including Oregon and Washington. And listen, we could survive with 47 states. The Roman Empire survived after a split for a while. So the point is, we can survive with 47 states. We don't need them. And then let an earthquake come and just take that whole part of the country and send it into the ocean, okay? Because they're all off the deep end anyway. Now, and by the way, getting back again to talk about Catholics, as you know, Barbara, we were talking about Barbara's comment. Javier Becerra, he's the Attorney General, right? Is a Catholic. Ooh, there's a shock.
And he says that California will take no corrective action.
Right.
You see, once again, the tolerant people.
Right.
They're so tolerant.
Right.
Yet they basically say, I don't have a right to believe what I believe.
No, because they call it hate, Joe. It's called hate. They say we're not going to let the church do this because we're not going to subsidize hate. That's what they say. They think if you're against gay marriage, you want all gay people to die. That's what they're saying. Of course it's incorrect, but this is their talking point. They think if you're and gay marriage was never an issue up until they made it an issue. Church never made it an issue. It's like adultery. Nobody's looking to change the rules on adultery. Adultery is theft. If you steal something from somebody, you steal. That's it. Thou shalt not steal. Sodomy was always considered a sin. Church never made it an issue. Church never really had to preach it from the pulpit because it was just an accepted thing. Yeah, if you sodomize somebody, that's a mortal sin, and you'll go to hell. So you got to repent of it. You know, it was them. It was them. It was the left and the cultural Marxists. They said we got to attack that teaching in the Catholic Church. What's one of the ways they did it? Send in the Jesuits. Send in Father James Martin, the infiltrators, to say, well, the church really needs to change its teaching. And that's what you get. You get Catholics like Javier Becerra, who should be excommunicated. He should be excommunicated. Oh, who's that? Who's that? Barbara? Who's that an impersonation of? Oh, come on in. Come on in. The water swine in the Catholic Church. Come on in. Oh, that's Cardinal Dolan on Fox and Friends. In the morning, we don't excommunicate people anymore. That goes back to John Paul II. Well, John Paul II took office in 1978. The church goes back to 33 A.D. All right. So what is it, Cardinal Dolan? Javier Becerra needs to be excommunicated.
Along with Cuomo.
If I do something that's in public contradiction to church teaching, you know what I would expect to happen to me? Excommunication.
And why is that? Because, once again, it's a public sin and it causes scandal. And it confuses people. And it should be clear. That's another conversation for another time. But you know something? The minority leader, Kevin McCarthy, he's a Republican for the state of California. He's a good guy. I've seen him on a number of interviews. He basically said the state's actions are cold and cruel. I urge California's Governor Gavin Newsom to comply with the Trump administration's notice and stop forcing pro-life Americans to choose between their personal beliefs and health care. You see, once again, what is the problem? I thought you're tolerant. Why can't you carve that out? Doesn't it make good political sense? No, because you're an ideologue and you hate us. You would lock us up if you could. There's no question in my mind. You would drive us to a concentration camp if you could.
Look at what they look at, and when people think that we're just being a little hyperbolic, go look at what Dick Durbin, Richard Blumenthal, and Dianne Feinstein did to Amy Coney Barrett at her nomination, at her confirmation hearing. If you want to see the new Inquisition, these are the people that rail against the Inquisition. The Inquisition was the greatest crime, or one of the greatest crimes in human history, which is a lie. But they are the Inquisitors. If Joe and I ever took off, if we ever had 5 million subscribers on YouTube and another 5 million on Facebook.
Oh, and the wrong president came into office?
We will be dragged up in front of Congress. Okay?
Forget it.
In other words, and we will be questioned on the things that we say, because this is Big Brother. Big Brother is here. Big Brother just doesn't have power yet because Senator Sanders hasn't been elected. But if any one of them have any kind of power, look, Javier Becerra is saying it. Federal law is saying you have to comply with this. And he's saying we will not comply. This is a problem. This is a problem. And they're making it clear that if you don't kowtow to Chairman Mao, as it said in the movie that one time, if you don't follow the communist line in California, if you don't accept the cultural Marxism, you're going to suffer some serious consequences. It's here. We are not making this up. We're just talking about it. But it's ripped right from the news. The totalitarians are here. They're literally knocking on your door. If you're at Mass in a Catholic church, they are knocking on the door. Soon they will come into the church. Soon they will start arresting people.
It happened in Mexico at the turn of the 20th century.
Right.
It happened in France during the French Revolution. Why can't it happen here?
Why do people think America is immune?
Why can't it happen here?
Go look up the Cristero War. That was only 100 years ago.
100 years. They shot, what's his face? He said Viva Cristo Rey.
The young kid.
Miguel Pro.
Yeah.
Shot him up against the wall. It was in a newspaper. The picture of them executing a priest.
Go listen to Plutarco Calles, who was president of Mexico at the time, and listen, and you could get it. It's on YouTube, or you could go in and read some of his stuff. And listen to the current crop in the socialist communist.
That was 100 years ago.
That was 100 years ago. And go see if they don't sound identical when it comes to how they are attacking Catholics in particular and the Catholic Church in general. And we unfortunately are in a position right now in human history in America where we have a hierarchy that has simply been infiltrated beyond belief. Christ will right the ship. Christ will right this ship. It's his ship.
That doesn't mean America stands.
Right. America's not immune from any of this. It's running red. Javier Becerra is proving it. Okay? Barack Obama proved it. In other words, no exceptions for the Little Sisters of Poor. No religious exemptions.
Barbara Feinstein, when she speaks with Amy Coney Barrett, basically says the dogma is strong with you.
Right, that's not an inquisition?
Podesta emails to Hillary Clinton, basically saying we have to change these antiquated ideas.
Right.
It's written down.
Right.
And yet the Catholics go right to the polls and they continue to vote for the Democrat. They're persecuting your church.
Well, these are people that don't care about the church. They don't care anyway. There are people who say I'm Catholic, I'm a lector in my church, and I agree with the church on most things. No, it's an all or nothing proposition. It's an all or nothing proposition. I had to learn that. Joe had to learn that. We all had to learn that when we started to take the faith seriously. It's an all or nothing proposition. Where there's area for argument, we could argue. But where there's area for no argument or no area for argument, we have to obey.
And it's time to stand up. It's time to vote right. It's time to make your voices clear. and it's time to call people out.
That's right, and that's exactly. And you know who's doing that par excellence is Donald J. Trump, and he's not even Catholic. Joe and I said earlier that basically we think after the election Donald Trump's going to convert to Catholicism. We think he's going to take the faith of his wife. We don't know what Bern.
It would be nice. I don't know if he'll do it in office. I think I could see.
No, he'll do it in office because he won't have another term. So I think he'll just wait till. I think he'll just wait till he gets reelected. But I'll tell you what, he speaks like a Catholic. He's defending the church.
Oh, you just made people twitch.
Well, good.
You just made people twitch.
I did want to say hi, Inez. How you doing? Dan commented. Edward commented, I'd like to see the Bishop of Tyler, Texas, headed to USCCB. Absolutely,
Joseph
Edward.
Strickland
Joseph
rocks.
Strickland, he rocks. Dan said, I want to get to this comment. My wife and I grew up Protestant. We are converting to Catholicism. We had no idea what we didn't know about history, philosophy, and theology until we started reading and talking to Catholics. As a Protestant, you have no idea of the foundational truths which were robbed from us. Dan, all I'm going to say to you is this. Given the current, please don't hold the